Well, let's start. Miloš, I'm going to teach you today, hopefully. So, given that I have a constraint of no table to write on, and I usually write on a piece of table, I will just, how do you say, do it like this. Anyway, what are we going to do is like building argumentation, so you now should be able to grasp the types of motion, the BP or whatever, but you're still in the mystery of how do we prove stuff and how do we do stuff on its own. So first of all, do you want to flush the water forward? Is this? Yeah, no, I'm searching for one. Give me 1 second, because I will buy one.
Mogu ga uzeti u pripremu. To je.
Ne, nisu ni to rekli, nego su rekli da se više fokusiraš na ono šta radiš s tim činjenicama, nego na same činjenice.
A to je još i lakše. Većinom, ako neko neće opće znanje, ako ima neko neće opće znanje, a tebe možeš se pobiti samo ovako sa činjenicama. Ako ti nemaš opće znanje, možeš se pobiti.
Okay, so let's go on. One of the first things that you need to realize, and it's very hard for people to grasp, is that debating is basically like a sport. So it's completely different to what you would do otherwise. So even if you've thought of yourself, and I thought of myself when I go into debating, like, oh, I'm very good at arguing, I can argue with my friends or something like this, there is a huge difference that is often missed that leads people that are beginners just miss, how do you say, how much do they need to analyze, what do they need to analyze, and how is it being done. The crucial difference is in like debating with your friends or something like this, you have this, how do you say, stoppage of you wanting to still be friends with these people, so you're not going to challenge them as much. You are going to, like, if somebody tells you a story, you can imagine this, if somebody told you, ooh, yesterday I got smashed, it was so bad, I jumped into water, I swam, it was amazing or something like that, right? You're most likely going to nod along, yeah, fine. You might not believe it, it's fine. The difference in debating is if that were emotion, you would try to challenge every single thing that this person said. You would try, how did you, like you couldn't have gotten into water, it was too cold, you would be freezing now or something. You would try to challenge every subset of the story that they said. So this is basically what debating incentivizes teams to do, right? So I want to win, and if I want to win, I'm going to challenge every premise that you have, even if it might sound obvious or something like this. So the point of the analysis is to try to make this unplausible for their side, and to try to make some of these arguments sound, how do you say, proven, by the way that they cannot challenge it, or it would be very difficult to challenge in 7 minutes period or something like this. So I'm going to show you how is that being done, but like the main problem that novices, when they start, and the main bad habit that they do, is this like narrative argument that is working in real life, which is to say, like, I'm leading you step by step, but it's still based on me believing that this will happen. So if we pass policy, if we, I don't know, take in more migrants, the right wing is going to backlash and they're gonna rise in polls, and it's going to be worse in the country. So that would be usually a novice-made argument or something. So this is pretty sound, it's fine, it might work, and it's completely okay. The issue is, this is going to be challenged on every possible way, that this is going to be irrelevant, that this is going to be, how do you say, not true or something like that. So your, how do you say, task is to prove that this argument is true and that this argument is relevant. So how is that being done? So one of the cool things to remember is how to structure an argument by dividing it into and having this sexy structure. So I'm going to tell you what this is, and I'm going to go through each one. So this is a very cool way to know how to structure and how does one argument look like. Now before this, how do you know if you have delivered an argument or something like this? So basically, there is a time, and this is why we're telling you and we're pushing people to take out their stopwatches when they're delivering speeches, to look at them and to do something like this. So you can estimate by how much time you spent on a point, the level, did you actually explain it or not. So the perfectly analyzed point will be delivered from 1 to 2 minutes, not less than 1 minute, possibly not more than 2 minutes, but it can be more than 2 minutes or something like this. So if you're analyzing something and you literally spend 15 seconds analyzing it, it's probably not analyzed well enough in order for the teams, how do you say, for the judge to buy it. This doesn't mean that automatically you lost because maybe other teams also didn't have it, but this means that if somebody has higher analysis, and this is how BP is judged in this sort of situation, they are going to win. So BP, and this is also the second rule of the sport, of the fight club, of the debate club, is to talk about the debate club, and to actually, the second rule is that judges always judge based on the levels of analysis. So this is where people get frustrated, because usually novices have very smart, cool ideas, which are not proven, and then you lose to somebody who has a stupid idea, but they have proven it in a certain way. So this is where it is. So I wanted to bash the society, and then I realized it's being recorded. But yeah, Vienna. Anyway, so this is how you do it. So cool. So let's start from the top to the finish. But like, just remember, and this is what I will write before. 1 to 2 minutes. So it's also a very, how do you say, trap that people usually believe at the beginning of the debate, that you need to have 5 arguments in order to win, and that it's just based on how many arguments you deliver. It's not. It's based on how many arguments of this you prove. So you can win with, so somebody can have 10 arguments and you can have 1 argument, but if that argument is analyzed and proven to be most relevant, it will win. So the British parliamentary system is not about how the quantity of arguments, it's the quality of analysis and the quality that you present in this sort of metric. So usually this means per speech you will have 1 to 2 or 3 maximum arguments or something like this, and just take out your stopwatch and try to figure out how you're doing. Second of the practical things, it is to be 1 paper should be 1 argument only. So this means that if you just come up messy, like 1 argument and then I'm going to immediately write a second one or something like this, first of all, it's not enough, like similar to the amount of time that I'm saying, it's usually not enough if it's less written than 1 piece of paper. But secondly, it's very messy, it doesn't allow you to enter much, it gives you psychological, how do you say, you feel at ease because, oh yeah, I feel this paper, so who cares? But like, if you, even if it stays, like if the argument stays on 1 paper and you have filled like 1/4, it will tell you, this is not very well or analyzed argument, isn't it, right? So you will analyze it more. So even if it's half-empty paper, just get into the habit of 1 paper per 1 argument and just do not mix them together. So this is the practical thing, but let's then go into the real thing. Statement. Usually people believe this is the most, like, the least important one, but I do think there is a merit in discussing it in some way. So this is usually something that will last 5 to 10 seconds of your speech, which is basically going to outline what are you going to do in this argument now. This is basically impact before impact. So I want to prove there will be, so my tagline, if I want to prove, I don't know, political violence or something like that, there will be less political violence. There will be less casualties. There will be more social cohesion. There will be less polarization or something. So usually it's good for novices to try to think of what will be less and what will be more inside of this sort of thing. Obviously, the more you better you get in debating, it will become more sophisticated, but it's something practically that can be a very, very cool thing. Why? First,
that's the name of the arguments I was talking before. That's what you state first, second, and third. That's the statement.
So the statement is actually very, so I said the statement is very important in terms of why. First of all, judges are not robots. Judges have their attention span, they have their understanding of English, they sometimes don't care. So usually people, and that's usually ESL speakers, people who don't speak very well English, they are very well, it's a very good way to fuck with grammar now. People who don't speak as well English or something that get listened to less or something like this. This is what debaters and I had to deal with or something like this. By being very clear in what you want to do, it means that people listen to you more. So it's very analogous to what I said to them, is imagine we're going on a trip together, like you're taking me on a trip or something like this, and if you do not say, oh, we're going somewhere, seaside or whatever or something like this, I might have no idea where we're going. But if you say, we are going to Split or something like this, so I will have expectation of where are you going, how are you going or something like this, so I can follow whether you are going in the right direction, I can be at ease whether you're going in the right direction, I can be on the journey with you, rather than if it's very confusing or something like this, I might be very scared where you're heading me and be like, or something like this. So it's very, very important to have a clear statement in terms of where you're leading the judge, because everything else that you will do next is going to hinge on them understanding where are we going. Because like I have to compare the thing that you want to prove with the ways that you are proving it in your situation. If you don't do this, you risk people just missing your point in the beginning. As I said, usually a rule of thumb, it doesn't have to be like what will change, whether there will be some more of something, less of something, whether something is immoral or moral or something. This is usually a very like possibly good, how do you say, way to do statements. More, less, etc. So this is also impact before impacts. This is usually how I call it. Okay. Impacts for people who speak Serbo-Croatian, uticaj, promjena, šta se dešava. Okay. Explanation. Also called analysis. So this is where the majority of arguments will be spent. Majority of the arguments will be spent. Plausibly the whole minute, 2 minutes, or whatever will be spent on this. How do you do it? How do we explain stuff? So this is a crucial problem in debating, and this is what actually makes the debate possible, is that we, in logic, there is like deductive reasoning or something else, right? Like you deduct, how do you say, thing that will happen from a sentence that came before it. So you have 2 layers of analysis that you can do. One is very vertical, and it's going, this will lead to the next thing, and then that will lead to the third thing. So this is what when I started and said, like, if we accept more migrants, more right-wing, how do you say, populists are going to rise, they might come into power, and they might ruin other things in the country or whatever. Like, this is a very simplistic argument, but this is how it will be. So deductively, I'm proving one thing over the other. But the thing that is oftentimes forgotten is that it also should be done horizontally. In terms of on each level of analysis, you should also have something that will back things up the way as it goes. So usually the way how do you say, the way we present it is if you have to come from A to B, so from point A to point B that you're trying to prove, if you're doing this narrative thing in just deductive reasoning or something like this, it's a line, you went there, it's fine, you did the thing, but it's very easy for the other teams to cut the line at some point and to ruin your argument or something like this. Just by having more reasons along the way on the same levels of analysis. So for example, right wing will rise because 2 reasons. One, people fear migration because they fear they will lose their jobs. 2, how do you say, media usually exploits and overblows how much migrants are coming. 3, how do you say, when you fear very irrational and you overstate the impacts that can happen to you and you value yourself more. So maybe that's 3 reasons why something is true. And that makes these things much more, how do you say, harder to break, because then I will have to, as a opposite speaker, I would have to break all 3 or at least mitigate them to a sufficient extent if I want to win. But if I just say right wing will rise because of migrants, this is logically true on both sides, but it's very easier for me to spin that and say, they're not really, they're going to maybe rise 1% or who cares because they're going to be pushed down by some party or something like this. I can make some bullshit analysis that might not be true, but it's analysis nonetheless that the judge will have to buy in the end, and you will lose the debate. So it's very important for you to have a subset of reasons why something is true, and I will talk about this subset of reasons. Usually that's what we call mechanisms. SMS. Yeah. Cool. So, what do I mean by mechanism? For any machinery to work, for like your watch to work, you need to have some machinery going in there, right? So usually in the watch it's like cog wheels that turn. So if you take one out, it might work still, but it will be very horrible and it will be glitchy or something like that. So mechanisms are basically inserting some things that will make your argument work. So everything of these premises can be challenged in a certain manner. So the way to strengthen the premises is to draw your premise, why something is true, from something that we all agree is true. So to start from the similar, how do you say, agreement point. This doesn't have to be true 100%, it just has to be very difficult for the other side to disprove in the 7 minutes time, right? So these are the things that are commonly found in academia, the things that you know from your faculty, the things that you read, or something that is not disputed, that is not currently a debate. For example, like in psychology, if you talk about like fear of death makes you irrational, makes you do some things that you wouldn't otherwise do, or fear makes you do some things that you otherwise wouldn't do, it's very difficult for the other side to disprove the thing. They can say sometimes it doesn't work, but I can say sure, but in the majority of situations it will work, or something like that. So right? So this is the thing that is very difficult for them to disprove. But if you then base your argument, for example, the rise of some sort of party, based on look, they're going to ponder and fearmonger and make these people who are fearful then vote for them because of this, it's much more plausible for me that this is actually going to happen than if you just say it's going to happen, right? So on both sides you're proving kind of the same thing, but here you're cushioning yourself against the responses from the other side. You understand what I mean? So I'm going to illustrate this like in a couple of examples, obviously, so you know. But this is a very cool and crucial point to understand from the get-go, right? So you basically draw. I'm going to go a bit lower. So you basically draw from the existing spheres of academia and stuff like that. So let's go. So it's very usually useful to go through some of these spheres and to give you a couple of examples so you can get the point what I mean. So firstly, let's talk about, for example, psychology. Cool. So usually, as I said, you can fear makes you irrational, right? So this is a statement that is very hard for people to disprove, right? Or something like that. But you can derive so many conclusions from this statement that would be then, how do you say, make your argument, that would make your arguments way stronger. What are these? First of all, how does it make you irrational? For example, you overstate the chances of you, how do you say, being harmed by this. So if you fear death or something like this, and if you fear that terrorist attacks happening or something like this, you would, how do you say, overestimate how likely it is for you to die in a terrorist attack. So for example, if you talk in reality, statistically, you're more likely to die from a cow falling on you than from dying from a terrorist attack. But people do not fear cows, people fear terrorists, right? Because like fear of something being gruesomely done towards you, blowing up in a how do you say, explosion or something. This sounds way more scarier than cow, even though it's horrible on both sides or something like this. So it makes you similar. Like people after Jaws, like the movie was released, people are fearing sharks was like cumulatively on like more people die from stupid things like falling than they do from sharks ever eating them or doing something like this. But we all feel sharks. Like when I go into the seaside, there's no shark, but I'm still like, maybe, what do I know, right? So this is making me overestimate some of the stuff. So by making this conclusion, it's making my, how do you say, conclusion about like, how I would treat the minorities, how I would fear them, much more plausible if I say it's rooted in something that is as clear as this. Let's do another one because fear is, for example, confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is basically, in psychology, says that people, even despite the opposing evidence, usually just take into account their own evidence or something like that, right? So if I believe in something, I'm gonna search for that thing. So if your mom finds out you're smoking weed or whatever, she's gonna search. She's afraid that weed is bad. She's not gonna search positives and negatives of weed. She's gonna search why weed is bad, and then she's gonna find shit ton of things. This is when you go to the WebMD. That's why you self-diagnose with everything it gets or something. But like confirmation bias basically means that people sometimes know that some things are happening. They know the statistics, but they still believe otherwise because they rationalize their opinion or something like this. So this is a very cool mechanism that can prove that, for example, the policy is not going to change anything or something like that. I don't know, that meeting, like for example, this is, you have a debate about like breaking up enclaves when people, or breaking up ethnically segregated areas or whatever. Usually people say, oh, but people are going to mingle, they're going to talk with each other, they're going to stop discriminating. But like confirmation bias can dispute it or at least mitigate it, because like even when you found the contracting evidence, I know a black person even though I'm racist, I'm gonna just say to myself that this is an exception. This is like a different black person than the majority of them or something. So I'm still gonna be racist, and I'm not gonna change my opinion in that metric, in that manner. So this is a very cool mechanism that you can say. So, as I said, I'm going to move on to the other one, to do something. But like, notice that these are some of the things that it would be very hard for me to disprove confirmation bias. Say, no, it's not true, people always change their minds or something. So if you root this in something like this, it's easier for you to how do you say, to win an argument. One more thing, and that's a cool frame that I gave to them, so I want to give it to you as well. But why is it hard for people to change their opinions, right? It's usually hard because like people want to, and this is the mech, people want to perceive themselves as moral and good people, right? And stuff like that. They want to perceive their actions as I want to be a hero of my own movie. I want to be and everybody else is side characters, and I don't want to do this. So I want to be perceived as somebody who's good. Every change that I make in my own personal belief systems means I have to reevaluate what did I did up until that point in my life, and was I moral or not? How did I treat, like if I don't know, have to change, like whether I will become feminist or not. I have to like reevaluate how did I treat females before. Was I a complete douchebag and asshole? And for the majority of people, it's very hard to do. And especially it gets harder as you grow older, because then you have much more things to regret over time. So it proves a lot of this stuff. But like everything there that I said is like, how do you say, not speculation, but it's like logically linked to the mechanism that I said at the beginning, which is to say, people want to perceive themselves as good actors, as moral actors, right? And this would be the mech, right? Let's see. Okay, cool. Right? So, do you understand my point? Is this so far clear?
Yes.
Cool. Two.
Can experience be a mechanism?
How do you mean?
So, for example, people, if they have certain experiences, they're going to be biased based on their own.
Yeah, sure. I thought you meant like your personal experience.
Oh, no.
So that, no, but yes.
So if someone grew up in a religious country, they're more likely to perceive things in that way.
Sure. That would be a mechanism. I would say that, because like, how would I disprove it? How would you come about and say like, no, it doesn't. No, right? So you're tying your conclusion. Like obviously, the next thing is to draw a conclusion from there. What does this mean? This means that I will continue discriminating, or that I will act in a certain way towards policy. But yeah, good. Sociology. I'm just going to go through, and progressively as we start, I'm going to give you more space in terms of to think of some of these. So, for example, wanting to belong to a certain group, mob mentality. These two can be interconnected, they can be separate. So you want to belong to a certain group, which means that you adjust what you do according to what this group's preferences are. So for example, you do stupid shit when you're in high school, specifically because you want to fit in, even though you might not do these things otherwise. Similar to like the mob mentality, which is like which is to say, like if I'm in a group, in a group, I feel more empowered to do some of the things that I wouldn't otherwise do. So for example, this is why people in mob are more likely to be violent and more likely to do stuff that they wouldn't otherwise do because they feel like protected by, how they say, being in a group. So as like more likely to throw stone, at protest if other people are doing it, rather than if you are the alone, you're first one or something like this. Can anybody just to try to go on? Just to try to see if you get it. Can you think of any other example from sociology if you know sociology?
Surrounding. Surrounding.
Yeah, so how did it influences your...
Yes, this is the last question the colleague had about experience, and the experience are brought by the surroundings.
Let's see. Nice. Surroundings influence your, and then blank, whatever, influence your, let's say views, personality, whatever, or something like this. So this actually challenges, and that's good, like I would say, like the way you were brought up influences what you will think. If you were brought up, so I was brought up in a very orthodox Christian family or something. I had a different perception of LGBT people and stuff like that, of Croats or something. It's just by being brought up in a family that was more hardcore or something like this, and like it influences what you will believe. So this challenges what is actually your free will in believing some of these things or something like that. So it's very cool and crucial to talk about, like either the motion, what you can derive. We have to, if you want to, how do you say, have a change, we have to change the surroundings, we have to change the underlying culture. For example, this is in feminist motions usually a clash. If we talk about like, you have to change the culture behind rather than the laws itself, because the laws itself are not going to solve anything unless people are actually thinking that women and men are equal in terms of ability to work or something like this, right? So this is a way, for example, to connect this to emotion, right? But that's true. Let's move on to the next one and then you do another one. So 3, let's talk about religion. Do you have any, I mean from yesterday actually, do you have any religious mechanisms?
Fear.
Controlling people.
Controlling people is more broad. How do they control this mechanism?
They make
Fear.
rules. They push people.
But why do people believe in these rules?
Because of fear of punishment.
Yes, what is the punishment?
Hell.
Right. Yes. Yes, this is literally yesterday's motion, right?
Yeah.
Heaven, hell.
So mechanism is not a fear, but thing that is brought into
That they use
yes,
to...
that is
Yes. Mechanism would be because people fear death. If you want to connect the two, why do people even believe in afterlife? Because people fear death. They want to have the answer towards what happens after and to make solace about it. And sometimes the answer is heaven and hell. It makes sense. But like heaven and hell itself as a mechanism is a way to prove why coercive power of religion is so powerful, right? Because like if there is an infinite punishment for me, like infinitely I'm gonna be boiled, somebody's gonna cook me or whatever, or I'm infinitely gonna be with how many virgins? I don't know.
7.
Yeah. This is infinite reward versus infinite punishment in comparison. If you really believe that, and this is very beautiful about religious motions. You don't have to prove that it's true. You just have to prove that some people really believe this. In their mind, everything that's happening here is irrelevant because like this is fleeting, this is passing, or something like this, whilst this thing that happens afterwards is forever. So you can prove why some people are doing some of these things. You can also prove psychologically why they feel bad about themselves when they're doing something. This doesn't mean, so by saying heaven and hell, this doesn't mean that people never sin and that people never do something bad. But this means how would they feel about them sinning or something like that. So for example, if you're like I don't know, a gay child running a family, you are still gay and you just feel very bad about that because like you feel you're going to hell because of it. or something like this, right? Because somebody's telling you you're going to hell, and your childhood is then hell itself. So hell manifests itself. That's actually a very good frame.
So let's say for another mechanism, can we say that the prayer is a mechanism, or the reward that we are getting for having a prayer?
Reward. So reward. Yeah, I think reward for prayer would be better mechanism. But let's the next one. Let's figure out. So for example,
why people accept religion? Why people?
That's more of a question. So what would be why do they?
Because they fear the unknown. And
Yeah.
it's better to have something
It can
that
be.
you know, even if it's bad.
But I would claim the fear of the unknown goes here, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they're interconnected. The point to figure out here is that they're all interconnected. You will it's not use one mechanism and like two. It's use multiple and then connect a coherent thing, right? What is the next one? The power of the religious leader, right? Religious leader is, so this is very conduit to God, right? So if I believe in religion, I believe that religious leader, that God is speaking through my religious leader. So if it's Pope, I believe that God is speaking through Pope's mouth, right? So if I really believe this means that if I'm, how do you say, disrespecting the religious leader, if I'm not listening to him, I'm actually not listening to God and not him, or something like this, right? So this means that their power derives from the fact that I believe that they are this, how do you say, people who have the better connection to the God than me in this sort of say this whole, right? And then you can derive loads of impacts from this, right? So how, like, all of these things can be positive, right? Heaven and hell can make people do good things because they fear hell. Religious leaders can moderate people who are extreme. If they say Allah didn't mean this, how do you say, you misinterpreted this, or you were coerced by ISIS or whatever, they can be a positive thing on the contrary or something like this. However, they can also be very negative if they are more extreme and they are negative. So both of these things can be spinned to both sides, right? It's just a matter of how you will prove that your thing is actually going to be, how do you say?
Can we say, I don't know, about religion is also discrimination based on the religious, when you're atheist and
So you can, so the mechanism would be, I mean, that's the point is, people believe Bible, Quran, or stuff like that are sacred, and these are the words of God, right? Those are the words of God, so they listen to them. But simultaneously, these things, the context of 2019 has changed to the context of at that time, right? And this has, how do you say, this is very hard for people. It's much slower for people to change, because like you need to interpret and you need to, how do you say, go against the word of the Bible, which is the only person who can do it is this person, right? Because this person is the conduit to God, so God is correcting himself or doing something like this, right? But it's, so you can say that it's very hard to change sometimes, but you can also say that it has changed in the past by these two mechanisms interacting, right? By religious leaders presenting it as something, this is it's very crucial, right? There will be a clash, for example, in some of these debates, whether there is more power and more people believe in this religious text, and more people are going to be like, the religious leader has led us astray, or more people are going to listen to the leader and be like, yeah, but he's the conduit to God, he knows better, how do we interpret this or something like this, right? So this can be a very cool thing. Let's go on. So politics. Smo tek krenuli. Mislim, nije pola treba završeno. Šta?
27
Sad nije 30. Pola završavamo. Mislim, pola sporedno. Šta?
Popodne je sad.
Znam, ali smo malo kasnije, samo pokušamo malo.
Dobro, samo sekundu. Nije u pola, u 20:30.
Po rasporedu?
Da.
Ok.
Sad ti kažem, nije tačno smo na vreme, tačno pola sata. Još half an hour. So I'm gonna give you a couple of these more, just to make sure that you got them, And then the issue is this list is not exhaustive. Obviously, you can have 5 more on each of these these sections. It will be on you from next time to just think and just have them more and more. Sometimes you will fail. Sometimes you will misread something as being a mechanism and then not being a mechanism. But that's fine. You will become a second nature as soon as you go, and then you will become much more annoying towards your moms and dads when you point that they don't have a mechanism and you. What is your mechanism, Mom, to prove that the drugs are bad? I want to drug myself. Okay, politics. Can anybody think of a politics one? What is true about politics? Politicians.
Theory. Theory.
What?
Theory.
Is that inherent, or is that?
That's assumption.
People might stick to their political parties even if their decisions are to their detriment.
Yeah, that would be confirmation bias, right? In this sort of situation. But like, what is true? Things that are pretty much true. Supply-demand curve is true. It's just the fact that where current the economics debates are happening, left versus right, are not whether supply and demand is true. That's true. The debates are happening whether what do we derive from that, what do we prioritize from that, and what do we do, right? So this is what you should also do. But the point on how to make your argument be true is to have some of these things as a cushion, right? Do you get them now, right? I mean, it's fine that you don't get them completely, but at least try to get a grasp of what do I mean by this. Okay? Is it clear?
Those are the weapons that we can use to make argument.
Yes. So to make your argument stronger, you're tying it with something that is less disputable, which means that your conclusion sounds more reasonable, right? Okay. Which still you can question and break the link between the conclusion and the mechanism, but it's very hard for them to dispute the mechanism itself, which means that you are already on the right track. So it's very harder for them. On the contrary, if it was just a statement without the mechanism, they would just, like, it would be very easy for me to disprove, because I would give the counter mechanism or give something else, and it's in my interest if I want to win the debate, and I will do that. And this is why people usually dispute everything that you say. Okay? So, one more thing is just about the relevance. You should try to analyze mostly the things that are going to be attacked in the thing. So usually when we get like feminist motions or whatever like that, usually people go into a trap of talking about, for example, in a feminist motion, why women are oppressed or something like this. But this is something that the other side is just going to concede. They're going to say, yes, they are. This is a bad motion to how do you say, combat that. They're just going to say this is a bad way to do it, and they're not going to oppose that something is a problem. So usually where to place the analysis is mostly why this is specific thing, the policy or whatever, is going to solve the thing that you want to do, rather than what is the problem itself, right? But usually people feel more comfortable because problem is usually obvious, and then you go into problem, blah, blah, blah. No, but like, why specifically my policy is better than all of the other policies in solving this is the thing. Okay? Cool. So we have two more things to deal with, which are less important. So as I said, examples, you don't have to have them. I have 15 to 30 seconds. This is not particularly just the example. This is just a way for us to make this sound sexy. But this is also, other stuff can be part of this, which is statistics, empirical studies, analogies, and stuff like that can be part of that. But the fact of the matter is, you will never win with the example. Literally never has it happened that somebody won because they provided an example. Example is just there to emphasize your analysis and something like this. So example is good insofar that you know how to derive, and you can, how do you say, reverse engineer. Example would be like you have already this clock, and you can reverse engineer what happened there, and then you can create your mechanism. But example is not there to prove your point fully, right? And this is where people make mistakes, right? They say this policy is true because it worked in these 3 countries, and then you sit down and then you feel you're fine. This is not the way, because it's very easy for people to break the link, to say this is a different context.
Like this is what people do in like international relations debate. Like if you talk about intervention, then you say, oh, but U.S. failed in Libya, it failed in Iraq, it will fail here as well. You still have to prove why. This is obviously very good for your side. It was obviously going to show to a judge that you have, like, I don't know, more merit, but it's never going to prove you the thing. Also, especially if we talk about the examples from history, I would be very wary about using it. So first of all, Hitler arguments, no. So this is what usually people do. Usually people want to compare stuff to Hitler. Usually people want to say, and then we get this stuff. It's very difficult to give examples from the Second World War because it was so extreme in all senses of the way. So just no. But second of all, every historical argumentation is false when somebody brings a context of 2019, how does the world look like today, or something like that. So it's very difficult for you to give this as an example. So for example, if you wanted prohibition as an example, it was 20th century beginning. It's very hard for you to prove it will be the same thing now. It obviously gives you the analysis, and you can still do it, but it's much, you need to tie it, why the circumstances has not changed, what is the same thing, and then make your argument. So our examples also need explanation. They cannot be just stated like, this is my example. No, but why the situation is going to be the same as what we're saying currently is the part of the analysis. Just the example itself is irrelevant in comparison to the second point that I told you, okay?
Okay, but would it be okay to, for example, use prohibition as an example and then tie it to something happening now?
You can,
in the same way?
But you can say, and this is the thing, prohibition led to more crime. Similar towards today, because the fact why it led to more crime is not that it was 20th century, it's that there is a mechanism of economy that tells you that there are some demands that even if we ban something, they will still happen. For example, cigarettes are the same. For example, gas is the same. Drugs are the same, or something like this, right? So you can tie it, but you have to do the thing that I just did. Even though it sounds very obvious, you have to do it. Otherwise, I can, like as I said, the point and why the debate can be frustrating is because people can get away with such bullshit by being better analytically than you. But this is a very good, how do you say, good practice for real life, because this is how real life looks like. People get away with bullshit because they're better analytically than you. So you need to learn that, and you will be better at everything, like job, mom, girlfriend, boyfriend, or whatever. Debaters are very annoying, yes. Quick, okay, so.
Also, don't make the whole debate about examples. So don't throw a million examples and think that the judge can understand what you were talking about. You need, all examples has to be explained thoroughly.
Yeah. So, as I said, 15 to 30 seconds depending on the example. Also, examples, as I said, we just call it examples, can be stuff like statistics, can be stuff like polling data or whatever. This again will never win you the debate. You will never win by saying, aha, but there 8% of this, or polling has been done and this has happened. You still need to prove to me why this is true. Why logically? Again, all the things that you know are very useful for you to know where to analyze, but not enough just to be stated as like, oh, this is the fact, so move away or something. So you still have to defeat the argument logically and present the argument logically rather than this is the facts and just you win or something like this, right? Again, it will be very frustrating if you lose like that. I know, but just try. Next thing, and the last thing in this example category is this analogy thing. And this is very, very useful and underused. It's very difficult to grasp when you're a beginner or something like this, but it sometimes makes or breaks the debate, especially morality debates or something like this. So it's, if you want to prove that your logic is more sound, and if you're providing something that is more, how do you say, controversial, or you want to present the other side as more controversial, you want to tie what they are doing or what you are doing to either something that's very sensible, that we are doing currently, or something that is very, how do you say, extreme for their side. For example, if you're proving euthanasia, right? You know what euthanasia is, the right to die. inject you with whatever drugs, and then you die peacefully. Okay. So if we talked about that debate, one of the good ways to prove one of the things is using analogy of currently you can refuse chemotherapy or you can refuse surgery, right? We allow you to opt out of these things, which de facto means that you will die, right? If you refuse chemotherapy, most likely you will die from cancer or something like this. But we admit that, and we do not forcibly make people do this sort of situation, right? So this is similar to euthanasia in this sort of situation. It's just even worse because people have delayed death, they're forced to suffer or something like this, right? So what this forces the other team is, first of all, to defend taking this also down, which increases their burden in terms of what they need to prove, or makes them be very morally inconsistent, right? Which means that they're also, in the eyes of judges, way less persuasive, right? So this is how analogies are very powerful, right? Secondly, for example, if you have, usually, if we have a debate that says, like, we had a debate that said that Western institutions, medical institutions should not cooperate with other institutions, medical institutions, that do not experiment ethically. So if the medical experiments are not done ethically, we shouldn't cooperate with them at all, right? And like the opposition to that motion in my room just stated, but we're going to save so many lives if we do this. Like people are going to be saved because that ethical experiments will lead to more, how do you say, cures being found faster, right? And this is where the analogies come into play, because my logic in this sort of situation, this is what's called by that logic. By that logic, you would also remove ethical standards altogether everywhere, right? Because like if your criteria is we should maximize saving of lives, we should then do this as well. Which means that in the eyes of the judge, first of all, they sound like they have a larger burden than they started with, and it also creates your thing to sound better. Similarly, if you want to minimize deaths or something like this, you can also preemptively imprison people who are more prone to crime, right? People who have a higher risk of committing crime, if we imprison them pre-crime or something like this, we might save some lives, but we do not do this, right? So they're forced to either say yes to just imprison everybody, which is just fucked up, or to how do you say, make your argument more persuasive or something. So analogies are very cool and powerful if you can use them in the right way. So it's very difficult sometimes to, how do you say, figure them out, but it's something that you should know and that you should try to do in certain senses, right? Just to figure out what is a sensible policy here that is similar to this policy, or what is a crazy policy similar to this policy, so I can, on the opposition side, for example, present it. Okay, cool. Again, this is not winning you the debate, but this is making it easier for you to win than with your analysis, right? Okay. Impact. So when you are done with all of this, usually I like to make, I cannot do it because I don't have a table, but I usually like to make a graph which says the argument should simultaneously be true and relevant. These are the two most important things. And these things are scaled because spending time on explaining something is true is making you not spend time making it relevant, and vice versa. So time is zero-sum game usually. Zero-sum game means that whatever you do in a certain area, you're losing in another way. So resources, this is also a very good, let me write this, this is also a very good mechanism for economy. Resources. So means if I win, you have to lose or something like this. So you cannot win simultaneously. So this means that if I spend 1 minute explaining why something is true, this 1 minute wasn't spent explaining why this is relevant, right? So the argument is split between you explaining why something is true, and this is true mechanisms, and then also explaining why is it relevant through impacts. So you can explain that an argument is 100% true. For example, if we invaded Syria, we will kill a lot of turtles. We might. Then you can prove that it's 100% true. It's irrelevant. You're not going to win the debate with it. Simultaneously, I can say that, yeah, I cannot prove. I can say that if we invaded Syria, there will be a third world war, which is obviously very relevant, but it's very hard for me to prove. So in this scenario, the balance of a good argument is between these two, making the argument relevant, but also true in this situation. I would say if you have to prioritize one of this, I would say it's better to be true than completely relevant, but you cannot be 100% just one and don't do the other, so you have to do both. So let's talk about the impacts and stuff like that. So this is basically when you end up in an argument, what did you say? What did that argument do in the end? What changed in real life that is tangible? Good ways to think about this is to think about like individual. So individual impacts. This is, just imagine a single person. What changes for that person's life? Why is their life more miserable? Are they more happy? Are they more alienated or something like this? So usually most of the debates can be boiled down to where people are more happy or less happy or something like this. So this is where you boil it down to the individual. Second one is this collective. So what does it do? Like, and obviously one single argument can have both impacts on the individual and both on the collective. This is very cool and crucial for you to how to say, think about. Collective, in terms of what did it do to the society, how are we treating each other, what are the, how do you say, how is the society structured, or something like this. It can be moral, in terms of this is just a moral thing to do, and we shouldn't do it ever because of some reason. This is more difficult because moral argument, moral impact is usually based on, even if this brings more benefit, this is still immoral and we shouldn't do it. For example, torture, right? This might bring more benefits, but we shouldn't do it because blah. Cool. One problem that people have is that they underanalyze impacts. So usually people think that some bad words necessarily mean that this is impact. For example, backlash, people rebelling, people rise of the right wing, then how do you say, whatever one of these things are. Usually people think these are indoctrination. These are all the bad words that people think are enough just to be said for it to have impact, but they're not. The problem is backlash and all of these stuff is a spectrum. Backlash and like people rebelling is a spectrum from 3 people protesting on the streets and being like, yeah, boo government, and like being massive demonstrations, toppling of governments or something like this. Obviously, there's not going to be a spectrum between, like there's going to be something in the middle, but you have to show me what is this middle and why is this middle relevant. What is this going to change? Are going to people fear each other? Are going to be, I don't know, internal polarization? Are there, what is going to happen when this backlash happens? Similarly, when the right wing rises, and this is what usually people like to talk about in debating, oh, the populism is rising or something like this. And the issue is, on its own, this is nothing. If you talk about why populism is making politics more vicious, worse, making the center party move towards the other side more extreme, or making coalitions less plausible because like now Merkel in Germany can make a coalition with how to say the left party because there is AfD taking 10% of the parliament, locking them some of the parliament. So some of these things are actually the next step of the argument, a next step of impacting. So just usually just question yourself, is there something that's tangibly happening to humans' lives and not some vague idea about like more hate, more tension or something like this. What does hate bring? How do people interact? What hate, more hate crimes or something like this, more victims or something like this, right?
Can we base our impact on technicality? Like for example, that it would be very difficult to pass something like that?
No, because like usually governments have a fiat that this will pass.
Yeah, okay.
So you can say that this is going to be ineffective, and there is a better effective. So usually good opposition sometimes is just to say this is not going to solve the issue whilst we are losing political capital for other things that can solve the issue, but then you have to present what are these things. But you cannot say, oh, it will not pass, because like there is a presumption from OG that OG can say that they will pass this motion. but nothing else than that.
Yeah,
okay?
but we can say that it's ineffective or that we
Yes.
can change people's mindsets.
Yes, and it will be bad.
Pass something
Yes.
along, for example.
Yes, and you should. Oh fuck, I don't have the... I wanted to show you the template. I am gonna try and post it somehow. I have an argument template that I created, which is basically like filling in the crossword puzzle, yeah? Which is to say, there is a statement at the beginning, there is, how do you say, explanations and stuff like that. But like, without it, I'm gonna just tell you a couple of things. First of all, usually a rule of thumb, rather than just minutes spoke, is that you should aim to have 5 vertical layers of analysis. So 5 sentences that are connected, that are going from one place to the other.
From A to B to C.
From A to B, yeah. 3, 4, 5.
Because often judges will say you lack analysis in your arguments, and that's how you solve that lack of analysis.
That is connected.
Translate in the Croatian.
Vertical, 5 vertikalnih linija analize. U suštini, so if I want to prove, as I said, that there will be more hate crimes or something like this, I need to have 5 layers of how we get there. So, for example, we pass this policy. There is a popularization of populism that says they're against this policy. These people get more traction. These ideas become more popular in the mainstream. I don't know, hate that they're spreading or something like this. People soak in that hate or something. It becomes more acceptable, and then they commit more hate crimes. This is just an example. This is not saying that this is an argument or something like that, but I'm saying 5 of this. But simultaneously, inside of all of these 5s are these mechanisms that I told you, right? We pass this policy, there is a rise of populism. Why? Because people fear, how do you say, migrants, people fear that their lives are going to be taken. So inside of all of these 5, you should aim to have at least 2 different reasonings for this. So different mechanisms for this. They're gonna, right? So like this. So inside of this, and then move on to this. So it's sometimes fine to have 1, it's sometimes fine, but like just as a practice, try to at least have 2 independent reasons why something that you're saying is true. So you're saying that, how do you say, this normalizes the idea, why is that true? Blah, blah, we, I don't know, we are like afraid of taboos, and if like we are afraid to be the first one to tell I don't know, some opinion or something, if we believe that we're going to be alone, if there's more people expressing the same opinion as we are, it's much more likely for us to, how do you say, express it as well, because we have the, how do you say, safety in numbers, mob mentality, or whatever, or something like this, right? So there's a couple of reasons why, how do you know, this will be, how do you say, the normalization then towards my next step leads to more hate crimes, right? So I'm trying to connect all these 5s with intermediate mechanisms that are on the same level of them.
Just ask yourself, every sentence you say, why is this happening? Why is that true? Everything you say, just why? That in that way you explain what are you saying.
But it's very cool and crucial to have a starting point and then to have an ending point. Yeah. And then to try to fill in the blanks in the middle. So I want to start from as taking in more migrants to more hate crimes. So then you just do it like a puzzle. What happens there? Taking in more migrants means people fear blah blah blah, and then next one, and then like. I'm going to do it very simply just to do. Populist parties rise, normal, the extreme discourse, hate crimes. Obviously, this has to be analyzed more in depth, but this is just illustrating how do you feel the blanks from one end to the other, right? Okay. So, as I said, as a practice, try to have 5 layers of analysis that are going to go horizontally. Look, this is just connecting A to B, but on the path from A to B, A should have 2 independent reasons why is it true, then B should have independent reasons why is it true, and then you're cushioning all of your arguments to be, how to say, less disputable. And it's harder for me to break, because for example, what you're going to learn in rebuttal, if I, for example, break as an opposing side, break this, 4 and 5 fall as well, right? Because I cut it there, and then if I break this connection, then all of the things that you say afterwards is that. So you want to be sure that all of these things are going to be secure.
So could one of the mechanisms for people backlashing be fear of the unknown or something?
Yeah.
That would be like
And overestimating the chances of you, overestimating the chances that you are going to be harmed.
Yeah. Or that someone's going to do crime or something.
Also like tribalism in people, they like to stick to their group.
Yes.
Yeah, tribalism.
Yes, you get it. So I hope, I mean, you were better than the intermediate group in terms of getting this. I think I did the same lecture literally towards them, a bit more simpler here. I hope you get this. Yeah. We are gonna practice this more, but this is just trying to break down the concept of debating. When this becomes this is very difficult to grasp, because you're questioning the things that you have done your whole life. How do you analyze stuff? How do you talk to people, right? And stuff like that. So it's very similar like learning to ride a bike, right? You struggle, you can. So this is like, I'm basically giving you a third wheel, which is gonna make you like some of these steps, that's gonna make you easier for you to, how to say, fly and to ride the bike in the end, if this is your goal or something like this, right? Okay. I hope this was interesting to you. I hope you learned something, and thank you for listening to me. Thanks.
Okay, and just 1 second before that, this is the structure of the argument. So you have your statement, and then you pass explanation, example, and impact. That's your
Does it
argument.
matter what order we do it in? So whether we present all our statements and then do each one, or whether we present each statement and then an explanation and then the next one?
That's a matter of preference. What I would say is it's sometimes very useful before you start your argument to just say my 3 arguments are going to be, and then say the statements, and then go my statement is this. Lastly, sorry, I almost forgot this. When you have a couple of reasons for something to be true, for example, what I told you here, it's usually very cool and crucial to enumerate what you're saying. So 2 reasons why this is true, or 3 reasons why this is true, and then you say 1 because they're this, 2 because they're this. Why? Because judges have only 15 minutes to make a call on a decision, and you have been debating for an hour, and I have been listening to you, right? Which means that I cannot go through every detail. What did you say? What is the single word, right? Especially if I have 3 wings, like people with me trying to discuss. We discuss different things. We prioritize different things. So it's very cool if you're this structured. Then this means that people are not going to remember your reasons, but they're going to remember that you said that you have 3 reasons, that you delivered them somehow, right? Which means that you're much more persuasive in that manner because you're more structured. It's stupid, and obviously it shouldn't be the case, but it really helped me when I started doing this, when people listening to me more and stuff like that, because as I said, in the reference, in the 15-minute discussion, they won't go through all 3 reasons, they're just going to say 3 reasons. And only if people challenge that and say that the reasons were bullshit, then we're going to go deeper into the reasoning. But like just enumerating them are very good. So just, people will backlash. 3 reasons for that. 1, because like they fear. 2, because they have this moment. Or 3, and there's something that is better to give 3 reasons structured in this manner than to give 10 not structured in that manner that is hard to follow, right? Okay? Thanks.